It's alive! It's alive!
Howdy folks, welcome back to another video. This will be part 4 and the final part on the Contraption CB750 base chopper. I guarantee you that. So I'm still waiting on engine parts. Meanwhile, we got our crap we can get done. So let's stop screwing around and let's get right to it. All right, so what we're going to work on this morning here is the linkages for the forward controls. We're going to start with the brake side. It's going to be a little more complicated because we got to deal with the rear brake light switch. You know, that guy up there. And there's a switch right there. So we got to figure out how to articulate, or not articulate, how to integrate would be a better word, that into the linkage and make it work. It also needs a return spring. The only return spring on it now is the ones inside the drum package itself. And that ain't enough. It's ready to fall down just from the weight of this. First thing is we got to take off these foot pegs and get them out of the way and deal with that bolt that goes through. All right, so look at that. This is not even tight. I mean, this nut back here for this big bolt that goes across is pretty much finger tight. I mean, you can kind of see it moving there. If I could hold the damn camera still. I tell you what, you might as well have made this damn thing out of Legos. The Contraption name certainly fits. All right, here's the big long bolt, and it looks like the tip is probably bent. I'd say from about here out. Let's put it in the lathe and see. I don't think it's going to make a hill of beans worth of difference because it's got to get cut down anyway. Get out of the way. This gearbox is about as clunky as an old freaking Ford Pinto. I guess about right there will tell us a lot. That's not too bad, really. A lot of this has got to get cut off anyway. Okay, let me put it back in and make a mark as to where it's sticking out the opposite side of the frame over by the shifter. This blue mark right here, the one closest toward the head side, that is the actual length. That's where it penetrates out the opposite side of the frame over by the shifter. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off about 2.5, maybe 2.25 times the width of the, or the thickness of the nut plus the washer. Only because in case we need some extra length over here, because I'm thinking we might need to add a bracket or something, because that brake is going to need some sort of a stop, positive stop when it comes back up. But if I just cut it off enough, like right in the middle of that, just for the threads, kind of the length of the threads are on right now, I don't think we're going to have that availability. So I may even go a little bit longer and then can always shorten it up at a later time. Probably add about 1/4 inch to this mark here, cut it off, and we're going to thread it all the way up to about there. All right, so here's the dingus end, separated from the main shaft Lorena Bobbitt style. You old guys will get that. And so it definitely is 1.25 thread pitch, and it's M12. So let's set it up to do this. Okie doke, gearing's changed. I almost screwed that up. Go figure. I misread the gearing chart. I was reading the 1. See, I'll show you this thing. This is kind of confusing. I was reading the 1.125 thread pitch, and I'm like, oh, that's a 45. I have the 60 in there already, as far as for metric threads, because I was threading up in here before. That's where I was doing that 0.5 thread pitch on that little thing for the carburetors. So the 60 was already there, so I just needed to change F, which is your main drive gear, off the spindle to drive your carriage here in your gear case, or whatever you call it, your gearbox. So that's this guy down here, which is actually a 50, not a 45, because that's 1.25 down there. So I caught it in time. I looked at it twice, and I said, hey, wait a minute, dummy. So let's just clean up the end as we traditionally do. We'll put a chamfer on and get thread up with a setting tool. How about set up with a threading tool? Thread up with a setting tool. What the hell? Now, I'm not going to worry about any thread relief on the end of this. It really doesn't need it. We're just going to be backing out, like real quick. I think we're going to have to come out of the spindle a little bit further. I hope I don't have to use a center. I really don't want to. It's pretty thick material. It's 12 mil, so I think we should be okay. But I need a little bit of room for this sucker to coast down because I don't have a spindle brake. All right, nice and tight. Don't worry, folks. I will figure out a way to screw this up. Trust me, I will. I got to get this threading tool set up perpendicular to the spindle. I feel today is going to be one of those double checking days, maybe even triple. Okay, that's good. All right, so how this works on this lathe is, this is your imperial threading chart, which we're going to do later because we need to imperially thread those 3/8 rods for the brake levers, you know, the linkage rods in imperial 3/8 24. We'll change the gears obviously over for that. But this is the chart we're going to use for threading metrique. So down here we're going to look at that. And since we're at 1.25 thread pitch, we want position C, which is up here. See this? This is how a lady down the road walks her dog. I guess she don't walk too well, so she lets the dog run off lead and off leash, and then she just kind of follows him around the neighborhood. And you know, Ichabod's afraid of his own shadow, so. But anyway, that's what happens around here in the country. So where was I? C? Yeah, we're on C, and 1.25 is in the 1 column, so we got to be way up in here. Whoa, it's hard to do one-handed. So C1, which in imperial would be the 4/8, 16, 32, 64 threads per inch, or TPI, depending on how you like to look at it. But in our case, 1.25 thread pitch, column 1, lever setting C, and last but not least, well, if it would go, we're going to go over to threading. So now the lead screw turns. And there we go. I'm going to use the threading tool to make a witness mark on this piece so we know how far to thread it. Now let's go down to a reasonable threading speed. Let's do a 200 RPMs. I don't have a whole lot of stopping room here. And once we engage the lead screw, it stays engaged. And we have to just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. This stock is already at 12, as you can imagine, so let's touch off. I gotta turn the DRO on, actually. It's a little, a little out of round here, but... yeah, well, it's out almost 15 thou. Well, I really can't get any better than that. Gonna have to stay. This is what I was talking about in the last video about these things bending because there's only 2 engine mounts. Of course, now there's 3. Should have 4. And of course, this, you know, the fact that this sucker was loose didn't help. So it's going to be what it is, just the way it is. What you do is you reset all your dials to 0. Crosslight is particularly important. Then we just use the compound for our depth of cut. Check our thread pitch. I get this wrong and we're buying another long bolt off of Flea Bay. You know, something don't look right with this. Let me get my magnifying glass. Now, something's wrong with that. That does not line up right exactly. It's almost like the pitch is too wide. And I don't understand why. I've cut 1.25 pitch on this lathe before, so let me investigate this. Okay, I see what happened here, and this is why you always double, triple check with a scratch pass and a thread pitch gauge, especially on a part that you don't have a replacement for. And here's the screw up I made. Now see those center 2 gears, those are joined together, they're cut together. The outer one is an 86 tooth, the inner one, the larger one, is a 91 tooth. And then this is the appropriate size gear for on the gearbox itself, and I said before I switched that over to a 50, which is correct. But I misread the thread chart. And you see this outside one is supposed to be engaged with G, which is the gearbox gear. That's why it has this boss on the outside of it, if you can see that. I'm trying to give it a little bit more light. So basically what I failed to do was, this gear here needs to be flipped around so the spacer's on the inside. So it's engaging with the 86 tooth, not the 91 tooth. So that's the mistake I made. So let me switch that and we should be fine. So that's the mistake. The gear numbers were correct. I just had the orientation off on the gearbox side. I got the fan and that AC on, so I got the, what do you call it, that thing over the microphone there. Keep the wind noise down, but no guarantees. It's just too damn hot already, and it's, what is it, 8:15 in the morning, and it's hotter than hell. I am giving consideration to try to figure out how to fund a mini split system. I don't want to do the install on it. I'd have to have it professionally installed. But you know, I got to sell that to the boss, and I'm kind of wearing her down, I think, a little bit on the idea. But we're talking some money here, and anyway, I'm going to go ahead and back this thing off in reverse, and we're going to use some Dykem on this, and so we can see it a little bit better. All right, let's try that again, and we'll measure it and see what we got. Back to 0. That really looks a lot like 1.25 now. We're bang on now. All right. Phew, crisis averted. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the inch button instead to go forward. The inching button is over here. Only forward rotation and inching. And then we'll back off with the lever, because when I slam the lever up, I have to do it real quick so we don't slam into the chuck when it spools down. A lot more control with the inching button, and then with the cross slide here, and then we can just back it up with that. So I think that's how I'm going to do it. So much better. The screw cutting is complicated. I'm trying to film it. Go watch John at Double Boost. He goes over that quite thoroughly about the difficulties in trying to screw cut and film at the same time, because this is a complicated operation. Whoa, shoot. It is not worth trying to pick up these threads. That's a subject for another video. There is a way to pick these up again and then reset and just keep going. But I got an M12 by 125 die. The reason, if you ask why I didn't use that to start with, it's very hard to get one of these started without the appropriate adapter for your tailstock, which I don't have. So I know I've got nice square threads started with the threading tool. We'll just take it out and put it over in the vise, and we'll go ahead and just run the die down it, and that'll finish this thread out. I should have double checked the tightness of the chuck. This is an adjustable die. I have the set screw pushed inwards, kind of spreading this out a little bit. What that allows you to do is cut a little bit bigger threads so you don't take too much off. We can always reset it lower, but we can't put it back on. Perfect. We'll leave her right there. All right, I got it fairly well tightened up. Those are not the final washers I'm going to use, but you see how much stick out I got. Now I'm not going to leave it that way if I don't need it. We can always cut some off, we just can't add it on. So if I need to consume some of that real estate as far as the length goes, putting some sort of a bracket or something on either side, either that side over there or over here, I've got the length of the bolt to do that. And that looks a lot better. I think we're going to use some on this side to make some sort of a stop. It's the only thing I can think of. I got to be able to stop it from coming back, otherwise this thing's just going to flop up. The only thing that would stop it would be the limit back here, and you really need a positive stop. This is on the foot peg on the original one. See that little screw that sticks up from below? That's an adjustable positive stop for the arm, you know, for the brake arm right there. So we kind of need to fabricate something like that. It's pretty important. All right, here is the brake lever from Fleabay. Here's the original. They look pretty damn the same. I need to do the rest of this off camera, and I'll bring you back periodically, because I honestly don't know what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to kind of have to concentrate and do some trial and error, or T&A as I like to put it, and then we'll come back and show you what the semi-finished and then finished product is as far as getting this thing to work. I will show you the screw cutting though on the 3/8 24 when we get to that point. Anyway, we'll see you in a bit. All right, so here's the piece. Let me show you where it goes first. Of course, it goes on here. You know that. Slides on this spline like that. And there'll be a flat here, which I'll explain here in a second, that it's gonna capture. This is actually a Heim joint. I said in the last video they're not, but it's a Heim joint. These are 3/8. I got these from my neighbor down the road, the one with the valve grinder. He just gave them to me when I told him what I needed. He said I'm never gonna use them. So it's 3/8. I'm pretty sure that's 3/8 in the hole too. So that's why I bought 3/8 bar stock at Lowe's yesterday. It's plated, so all we need to do is worry about the ends. Anyway. So the first thing I did was I took this and calculated the radius. In other words, from the center of this to that hole where the linkage is going to go. And that dimension I came up with is 1.867. So, you know, roughly, close enough. So I took this piece over to the bandsaw after marking it out, you know, by eye, and just cut it off to that length, close to that length. Then I put it in the mill. And we went ahead and milled the relief on this side of it. This is the side that's going to stick out. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make essentially half a hole. And that's what I did with the 1/2-inch roughing end mill. No problem. Then I turned this piece of, it's 1045. I probably just should have used mild steel, but it was in my little drawer, so I just grabbed it. Turn that down so it fit perfectly in there. That bigger end doesn't matter. It's just where it was in a chuck. So I turned it down so it fits that, which is now a radius, so it's essentially a half circle. Welded it all up. Once I did that, I just brought it over to the mill and I milled this flat. So the width of these Heim joints, as far as the broad surface, outside diameter, where this thing would sit on something, is about a 1/2 inch. So I milled this so it's about 5/8, give me a little clearance. And when we got down to where the weld was, I expected it to harden. It definitely got hard, but it did get hard there.
On the rise.
I ended up just taking really small bites at it and then used the 1/2-inch ball mill to kind of trim that out and give me a little more clearance. And then so what this is obviously going to do is give us a 3/8 16, I believe, or maybe 3/8 24 hole for a bolt that's going to go through that and tie into this. So it's pretty simple operations on the mill, nothing real extravagant. Setting it up like this and just clamping the shit out of it in the Kurt vise was a perfect way to do it, because now that flat is exactly perpendicular. It is perpendicular or square with that hole that it clamps down on. So the next thing to do on this is we're going to fixture this up, locate and drill that probably a 5/16 hole for a 3/8 24 thread. I think that's the same tap drill size as 3/8 16. So I knocked out this arbor to help do that. Even put the relief in the middle of it for the bolt. We're going to clamp it down to this little arbor, put it in some V-blocks, come to the center of it, because I got a center. I put a center in this on the lathe. This is the important part of putting centers in things when you're going to reference them on other machines. We can pick up on that center and move out 1.867, and then just rotate this around until it's eyed in the center of it, you know, as far as that goes, and then bang the hole out. Run a tap through it, and then we'll be all set. Well, I just squared up the arbor in the V-blocks just with a little machinist square, close enough. I'm going to have to run a tap or a chase through these threads. And I'll tell you right now, this is probably overkill as far as the accuracy goes. So we're just going to use the center again to kind of center up on it. And it's going to be close enough, you know, we'll just get it in here, and when it slips in, and she's happy. That is good enough right there. We can move out our 1.867 now. If I did this right, calculation-wise, it should work pretty well. What in the hell did I do? That's way too close to that shoulder there. Well, I didn't goof up on my math. What I goofed up on was I should have milled this up a lot further and then welded it in. I thought I had milled that in far enough to provide enough clearance, so when I weld this in and then kind of grind the weld back and use the ball mill and so forth, there'd be enough room. But this is where it would normally be. Yeah, it's not going to work there. What we're going to have to do is just move it over, and you know, it'll be a little bit of a different ratio, but I don't think a 1/4 inch or so is going to be a deal breaker on this. That means it'll move slightly less. That's 2.179, so Yeah, a little over a 1/4 inch. This is the crap that happens when you're doing stuff on the fly, you know, when you're doing stuff with without any drawings or anything like that. Because what we want is we want this sucker to be in an area where there's plenty of room for it, you know, so the head of this thing not going to whack that, you know, this radius. So I think we're just going to leave it right there and just deal with it. Put some juice on it. 3/8 24 tap drill size is a letter Q drill bit. I thought that was going to happen. What we're doing is we're hitting the backside of that weld there, just on one side of it. I'd like to penetrate all the way through, so I'm just going to slow it down and ease it through. I should have used mild steel, not 1045, because it went hard. Nope. Probably just ruined that bit. I'll get a high-speed steel end mill. It's close to that. I'll just run this 5/16 end mill 4-fluted through it. It's an old end mill. Really old. I'll tell you some stories where this one came from. There we go. Now, before I tap this, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this up into the straw-colored range with a map gas torch and basically anneal those hard spots somewhat. Then we'll run the tap into it. It'll be fine. Like I said, I did think about it, but just didn't pay any attention to it after that. I said, what the hell. My cutters will cut it, but I didn't consider the drills. What I need is some carbide drill bits. They ain't cheap. As opposed to me, which I am cheap. There we go. All right, folks, it'll be time to close out this section of machining, fabrication, threading, and so forth on the forward controls because they're pretty much done. There's only one thing missing, which is the brake switch, which I can't get into right now because I don't know exactly where the exhaust is going to lie. In fact, I'm not 100% sure the exhaust is going to clear all this. I'm pretty sure it will, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty certain it will, like I said. So anyway, I can't do that right now because I'm not sure where it's going to go. My idea was to put it along the frame here and then run it back through, maybe even through the spring here, which I'll cover here in a sec. Hook it up to the same spot. We'll figure that out later. But so as far as the linkages go, you already saw the Heim joints, stainless bolts, custom made, and I've got these things all bolted up. There is supposed to be a cotter pin behind this one. Can't use a what do you call it, a jam nut, because of the way that's shaped back here. It's not flat, so I'm just going to put a cotter pin on this one. The rest of them all have jam nuts, as do the Heim joints themselves. And so I'm sure those are not going to migrate anywhere they're not supposed to. This is adjusted up per the owner's size as far as his legs and his position of his feet. So you might need some minor tweaking, but that's about it. Now what we did down here for a positive stop, instead of putting a bracket on here as I said I might do, no need. I found this piece of scrap hex chrome junk over in my junk parts, and it already had an M10 thread in the end of it. I faced it down to make it the appropriate length. It already had a cross hole too, no threads in it. So I just drilled it out on the mill and tapped it M8 bolt, jam nut, goes down to the feature on the actual arm, what remains of the brake arm, that it normally would as far as the stop goes. You got to have one of these because this thing would just bounce around. It would just boom, boom, bang around, you know. The only stop ultimately would be in the brake pack, the drum brake pack, when the spring was relaxed. And that's just not right. You got to have a stop. So we did that and it works really well. I am real happy with the way this came out. Yes, there's a slight bit of deflection on this whole assembly. It's just the way it's going to be. Maybe I should have used some thicker steel on this, but that is pretty thick. I don't think that would have made much of a difference. So that's pretty much self-explanatory. I'm not going to go into a crazy amount of detail on this. As far as the spring goes, I just hooked up to that spot where the, that actually is where the brake light switch would go if this thing was horizontal. Drilled and tapped an M8 hole in the frame, and I made this spring perch pin with a little groove in it over on the lathe out of an old M8 bolt. Screwed it in, welded it, and it's got a good amount of weld on that, so it's nice and strong. Plus it's screwed in, so it's not going to go anywhere. And that gives me a good return rate on this. It is an old kickstand spring, so it has some stiffness. If he doesn't like it, we can always find another one, but I think it'll be fine. When you're pushing it with your foot, it's a hell of a lot different than when you're pushing it with your hands. You want these pretty stiff. He wouldn't have any feel on this brake if there wasn't a good stiff spring there. You wouldn't know really, you wouldn't be able to feel it. You got to have a certain amount of feedback, and that spring provides that feedback. So that pretty much covers this side. Let's go over to the shifter side and I'll show you that. Pretty much the same, just a shorter linkage. Same threads. Oh, I haven't tightened that up yet, have I? I need to adjust this a little bit more. Kind of lost my marks on this when I was moving it around, so next time he's over we'll have to find out to adjust it. Jam nuts. There's a jam nut on the back of this one, nice and tight, and I have it clamped in on the spline of the shifter shaft there on the side of the motor, and she works just great. I mean, she works nice. I don't think of any problem with this whatsoever as far as shifting goes. And yeah, a little bit of deflection from it, but it's the best I can do with what I got to work with. So remember, this is a longer bolt in here. This one has about the same thread engagement as the other one does now. Not before, but now. Because I did use a 6-inch, bolt over here. So that's pretty good. And, I think it's going to work out really well for him and serve him well. Everything's torqued. I torqued the hell out of all these bolts and Loctited them, so they're just not going to go anywhere. So I'm real happy with it, and I'm pretty sure he is going to be happy with his performance as well. Alright, so since we're closing out all that other crap in regards to the forwards, let's get back to the cylinder head and valve stuff. Over on the right here is an old intake valve, 2 springs, the inner and outer, some valve keepers and a retainer. Over on the left here is a brand new intake valve, likewise a retainer, keepers, and 2 valve springs. All this stuff right here came from a lot of valves. 8 valves that I got off eBay for a 69 to 76 CB750. And again, this one is, well, it's typically referred to as 77-78, but I'll kind of get to that here in a second. This motor's a 78 definitely based on the number, so these would be your 78 valves. Depending on where you read it, there are differences in the old style, if you will, quote-unquote valves, to the newer ones that took effect supposedly 77 and most definitely in 78. But there are some references to the original valves here that go from 69 to 77. I don't know how accurate that is. It might be that it might have been a later 76 build date for a 77 model, or it got changed early in the model year of 77, something like that. My understanding is that the 77s and 78s are typically the ones that you see these in with the small grooves and the valve looking like this, and usually the grooves are somewhat chowdered up just like these were when I went to take them out. They didn't want to come out the valve guides without stoning them. Stone, dude! Now what you have here in front of you is a brand new intake valve, aftermarket, that's from a 69 to 76 range. These are very easy to get a hold of, whereas these are not for the 78. They're kind of unicorns. David Silver Spare shows them in stock. I don't know how accurate their stock is. They got to be new old stock because it says OEM. and who knows what conditions they are sitting on a shelf. They could be all rusted up. So I chose to go with these valves, aftermarket, brand new, and again, the 69 to 76 style. Unfortunately, I cannot remember the name of the website that I'm getting all my information from. We got no internet. Spectrum's out there at the road doing something. So I'm not really sure what they're doing, but we're down. We got no communications as far as online. So I can't look it up. All right, the internet just came up while I was filming this. And so it's Cycle X, that company I mentioned in video 1. Cycle X Exchange or cycleexchange.net. This is a tech page. And they have a lot of good information about the CB750 cylinder heads. And I read through this the other day. Here's a 750 model identification, 69 to 78. See, they mentioned 77 here, and they mentioned a little caveat down the bottom. There seems to be a typo in the valve stem keeper groove and the photo of the keeper ID. It says through 77, it's actually 69 to 76. That's what I was saying before. It depends where you read it. Much thanks to CycleX here. They put some really good information up on their website. And since they build these engines, that's all they do, I'm going with it. They recommend, and it's preferred according to them, and all they do is build CB750 engines, is to utilize the 69 to 76 or 77, depending on where you read it. This style valve. Now you can see the difference in the valve grooves, where the keepers go and the retainers. These are much more preferred. They say that they just hold better. And since these are all chowdered up, I guess, and I have read it on some forums as well, that these old style can basically let go when you drop a valve in the motor. There is no difference in the valve sizes, lengths, the valve stem size, the face size, the face angle when they originally make them. No difference whatsoever. The only difference is in how this groove is. You need a retainer from the 69 to 76, and you need the keepers from 69 to 76. You can even use the newer springs because the springs are exactly the same too, supposedly. So I felt, since it was A, easier to get these, and B, they recommend, being a CB750 building place, machining place, they recommend these style valves when you're rebuilding one, and they specifically mention if you're redoing a 78, put these valves in. So that would be B. There is no C. And we're just going to put it back together with these kind of, if you want to call it, upgraded, quote-unquote, valves. I think it'll be better, and we shouldn't have any problems. Their website also gives some information on installed valve heights, which the service manual does not. So I'm going to be using that, and I'm going to try to figure out, I'm going to make sure that these things are going to work right, that the seats aren't sunk or something like that from whoever reworked the seats before. The seats are definitely reworked in the head, so I'm just not sure. They give you a generalized spec for both the total extension as far as the installed valve height, and they give you a spec for when you put the retainer on with the keepers. They have like a lightweight spring that's pretty narrow just to hold it in place, and you can do a measurement up to the edge of that. I'll probably try to do at least one, if not both. Alright folks, as you can see, I had to jump substantially ahead, so I'm going to go over the cylinder head stuff with you in a minute. First, I'm going to cover some valve stuff as far as assembling the valves and things like that you might find interesting, and then we'll go ahead and come back to this. Well, organization is the first thing, and this is all the cleaned up stuff, ultrasonically cleaned, the 69 to 76 valve parts. I know it's controversial. I do hone valve guides, especially the ones that come out of this motor, because those chowdered up grooves on the old valves probably scratched them up. I'm using lubricant. This is a fine grade stone ball hone designed for this. And, I know some people don't agree with doing it, but I believe it's important to do, and it gets any of the schmoo out. Then the cylinder head, of course, is cleaned again. It's about the 4th time now, and I pay particular attention to the inside of the valve guides with a small round brush. Now, for the first operation, I'm going to do an installed valve height check now that I know those numbers from that CycleX website, which was very helpful. I generally don't use 100% assembly lube on valves. I use a combination of that and oil, mostly oil. I have read horror stories about assembly lube inside the tight tolerances of a valve guide to valve stem, giving it problems in the future and with valve stiction and seizure. So I'm just going to install these, mostly oil, get them in place, and do an install valve height check. This particular check goes from the tip or the end of the valve down to the aluminum, not the top of the valve guide. And that's the only one I'm going to do. I don't see a need to do the other one where I put a spring in there and try to use a pair of calipers and check the installed height with the valve retainer in place. Just doesn't make any sense. Now, what we're looking for here, according to the CycleX website, is an installed valve height of 1.700-ish. They said essentially they're suggesting it's approximately 1.700. And luckily, all these valves pretty much came in bang on around that, within 10 or 15 thou. So all of them checked out very well in this regard. In this clip, I'm installing number 4 valve. 1, 2, and 3 are already totally done. And what I mean by that is I do this twice. Right now in number 4 exhaust, I'm putting the valve in, but with no stem seal. I do that on all the valves because I want to test them for sealing, using, in my case, isopropyl alcohol instead of gasoline. I want to make sure it's not leaking through. So I'm doing that without the seal in case I need to relap it, because you can screw the seal up doing that. And putting stem seals on and off is not a good idea. So I'm just going to go ahead and get number 4 installed, number 4 exhaust, and then we can flip her upside down for the 4th and final time and do a sealing test to make sure that they are all sealing well. I do like these older 69 to 76 valves as far as putting the valve keepers in. Once you get the feel for them and you don't compress the valve down or the valve spring down too far, there's so much space there in that keeper groove that you can just basically drop them in, make some quick adjustments. Really don't even have to use hardly any grease to hold them in place. They just fall right in, and it's kind of like partially going down inside of a funnel. And all you got to do is just release the valve spring compressor very slowly, and they come up and grab the top of that groove, and Bob's your uncle, it's done. I like to give installed valves a little tappy tap tap with a dead blow to make sure that the keeper and the retainers are actually seated properly. I know my shots are slightly out of sequence. That's number 2, not number 4. But I'm checking to make sure that those valves are sealing with isopropyl alcohol. We'll just look inside each port and make sure there's no leaking by. I don't let it sit too long, maybe about 5-10 minutes. That's long enough. If it isn't going to leak by then, it's not going to leak at all. There's a shot up into one of the intake valves, and you can see that she's dry as a popcorn fart. And just for good measure, here's another valve, nice and dry. Getting ready to install the head now, and you can see I have those 8 O-rings with the spacers installed on the appropriate locations. All right, so I am not happy at all with the head gasket. I didn't film any of it because I had to do some modifications to that gasket so it'll actually fit. Excuse me. It wouldn't fit over the locating pins that are on these guys on the corner. I had to open it up a little bit because if you didn't, you could force them over and it would kind of snap in on those. And then the gasket would kink in the middle. This head gasket is absolute junk. It's definitely the right one, and it's definitely on correctly. There's only one way this thing goes because the cam tunnel is slightly offset one side or the other. I can't remember which. And so this won't align in the center, the gasket that is. And I think you can kind of see that if I can get down in there. So essentially, if that was out of alignment, you'd see like a substantial amount of it hanging out one way or the other. And we're pretty much dead center now, because that's the way it goes, the only way it goes. So, I know it's on right. It's just an absolute piece of garbage. The main problems were the M6 bolts. One here, one there, and one at the other end, and then one here and one there. This is a long one. Said the wife, they don't line up right. And I had to open a hole up, elongated on the front here, and there is very, very little bit of that gasket left in relationship to that hole where the cylinder head meets the block. So I ended up putting some Cowabond on that before it went together. Hopefully that's going to help kind of back it up. Now I also decided on those steel spacers, these rubber washers that go around them, and I'll kind of show you a shot of that with those installed. Here's one of the old rubber flat washers that go around those. I went ahead and put some Cowabond on those as well because that's a real common leak point on these CB750s. And this thing did have an oil leak on the front of it. I think most of it was coming from the cam adjuster caps, which those O-rings came in the kit. Because I found all those loose, but even when I tightened it down, we were running at those test runs, it was still leaking. So I think we did have a leak up front there, or a leak somewhere was running down to the front. So I backed those up a little Cowabond. There's no Cowabond anywhere near combustion chamber or fire ring on the cylinder head gasket. Those did line up okay to the cylinders. You know, I gotta be honest with you, I'm gonna give this cylinder head gasket about a 6 in 10 chance of actually working long term or even short term, because it is an absolute piece of junk. I seriously considered just stopping and trying to find an OEM. They are unobtainium pretty much. You can find a couple on eBay. I don't know how old they are. I don't know if they're cracked. You just can't find them. So I would simply have to try another aftermarket, and what are we getting with that? So I made this one work so it fit right, and it didn't really get all buckled up a lot. It was still a little bit in there, but the cylinder head's going to push it flat anyway, which it is. Now this is all torqued up to spec. These bolts only go, these M8s only go to 15 foot-pounds, 15.2 to be exact. And as far as the M6s go, I do those by hand because my torque wrench wrist knows how tight to take an M6 thread. You know, that one as well, and the big long one. So everything is torqued up on the top here. I will probably go over the big M8s one more time after it sits here a little bit, because I got to go do some stuff. We'll double check. Well, actually, I already double checked them once. We'll double check or triple check them at that point. And then we got to get the cam holders in. One of them just is finishing up in the ultrasonic right now. And then we can do the rest of this. Again, I am absolutely not happy with this cylinder head gasket. It is an absolute piece of shit. If this thing works and it runs and it doesn't piss oil everywhere, I'm going to be extremely surprised. Let's put it that way. Put you on hold here for a while. Let me get some other stuff done, and then we'll come back at a later time, probably when we go to put the cam and the sprocket in and so forth. By the way, we are on number 1 and 4 top dead center and have been. So, excuse me, that should be pretty easy to do once we get everything bolted up. All right, folks, here we are. We're very close. The whole top end, with the exception of the head cover, of course, is all back together. Tensioner's in. The cam is timed properly. As you can see, and we discussed this in video 1, you have the key up, you have the line across to this number 4 cam holder, and that means the base circle for number 4 is up, which it was and is. So then we got the sprocket in, appropriate bolts that I got from eBay, Loctited in place. I just lined it up to my original marks and everything fell into place because the two bowl holes lined up to the sprocket, to the cam itself on the sprocket. You know, once you get the timing set, that is, and everything lined up. Tensioner's in and adjusted, and I've got a base valve adjustment done. So that means I've already barred the motor over, so it's kind of spoiler alert. There are no impacts of any valves or anything, which I didn't anticipate. So I'm just going to run it around 360 degrees for you by hand here. That's it. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, this motor seems a little tighter than I'd like to be. Like, for example, I was trying to hit it with the Kickstarter, and it was very difficult to even get this thing to budge. I don't know if it just needs a break-in or something. I know the cylinders are well lubricated. The rings went in good. There's no scoring on the cylinder walls, so because I have freshly honed bores, which might be a little on the tight side to start, and maybe to loosen right up. I don't know. And yes, in case you're wondering, the cam caps are in the appropriate locations. I triple checked those as I installed them, and I used a liberal amount of assembly lube. So what I need to do now, I'm going to set you up in the stand. We're almost done for the day. We're going to have to continue this tomorrow, but what I really want to do is spin this over under power with the starter. But I don't have any oil in the tank. I've drained the tank, but I have changed the filter, so it's a matter of just doing in here up to a certain point. I don't know. We'll keep watching it. I want to develop oil pressure. There is no light because they never put one in. So I would like to see oil pressure develop and oil start to come out on the top here. Hopefully nowhere else. And then we'll just see how it spins around. I think that's going to be a good diagnostic. So let me glub some oil in there. As I said, I'll set you up and I'll be right back. All right, ready to go. Contact. I'm going to check this now. Ooh, yeah. That's number 4, obviously. Generate some heat there with that compression. Better watch out for that gear in there. Put my finger in that gear and hit that button and it's all over. Pretty good. You know, we could do is run a compression test on it. I don't know though, it's not going to be that accurate because there's oil in the cylinders and stuff. What I'd like to do, I think, is just put the spark plugs back in and see how it cranks with the spark plugs in, because like I said, it feels like it's a little on the tight side. And let's hear it with compression. You know, see if it sounds funky, like there's a valve problem or something. You know, put a load on it, basically. All right, spark plugs are in. I haven't tried this yet. Let's see how it sounds. Well, that sounds great, actually. Now that coming out of there, I fully expect. Watch this. That sounds really good, actually. I'm real happy with that. Like it's not going da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da or anything like that. That sounds very well balanced. Okay, gee whiz, I'm tired. The reason it's doing that is because of all the oil I put into the cylinders. I totally expect to see something like that. It's what you see on an engine that's got like major league valve stem seals, as far as they're totally broken or totally cracked or wore out, and oil's getting into the cylinder, especially after it sits like overnight. And if you're taking the exhaust off and you can go direct in the open ports, you will absolutely see that. Now that sounds just fine. I don't know how good the battery is either right now, but I'm really happy with the way that sounds. I think this is going to kind of loosen up more, you know, as it goes, because I can kick it over now, somewhat at least. I mean, I'm using my arms. Obviously, this is designed for your foot, but I mean your leg, your other foot. I'd rather have it, I guess, I don't know if I mean it this way, but I'd rather have it a little tight, you know, and let it break in than loose, obviously. Those rings are, you know, those rings are pretty snug in there. Yeah, I think the battery is kind of weak because I haven't put it on charge in quite a while. I might do that overnight, and then tomorrow I'm going to clean up because this is an absolute disaster. And what we'll do is we'll finish up. Oh, wait a minute. I wanted to get some oil pressure, didn't I? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We got tons of oil coming out here now. Let me show you. This is what I want to see. We got it on 1, 2, 3, and 4 now. So this is what I wanted to see, because I did put those underneath these guys here. I did put those little orifices in. I called them jets originally. With the new O-rings, there's 4 O-rings up top, little tiny ones. 2 are blanked off on the ends, and the 2 in the middle actually feed the oil, and it blanks off. It's just a machining port, I guess. And then it comes out the holes that are designed to come out to lubricate the camshaft. So that we are definitely pumping some oil. So that means the filter's full, and I'm happy. Now, whether it's leaking out anywhere else, we're going to have to run it and see, because like I said, I'm not happy at all with the way this head gasket is. I mean, this was an absolute bastard. I wasted an hour and a half trying to get that thing straightened out so it would actually fit, but who knows, maybe the damn thing will actually work. I don't know. Getting late, so we'll see you tomorrow. All right, folks, we're going to try her here in a second. My neighbor's right out there cutting grass, so I want to let him get done with that first because I can't hear myself think. But I'll tell you this right now, clearance is clearance. So we did fit with minimal clearance, but enough on both number 4 and number 1 exhaust pipe. Nope, not yet. All right, so I'm 100% sure we need to do another synchronization because remember, we were trying to synchronize this thing with essentially 2 cylinders with low compression because I didn't realize it at that time. Number 4 has got to be way, way off, and it's definitely not as hot as the other ones at idle. So I need to get the carb tune on here, take the caps off of 4, 3, and 1 because 2 is your base carb. We don't need to remove that one. And then we'll go ahead and see what the synchronization is and try to dial it in. But she fired right up. That's kind of amazing. I thought it would just blow up. Nothing. Whoa, that's 10. I didn't see that. That's too close. Well, that makes sense. That's why it's not running on number 4 at idle. Not very much, at least. That sync is way off. Well, I can tell you one thing's for sure. I made a huge mistake modifying those slow jets, the press-in slow jets, as much as I did before, not realizing what was going on because she's running really rich. Now I'm going to try turning the fuel screws in. I meant to do that while the carbs were off and I forgot. And make sure that they're maybe like 3/4 to 1 turn out. We'll try that. I'll show you. I just tried it. It's pretty well balanced now. I'm going to have to pull the carbs and try to get those pressed in slow jets out. I have another set I can press in and then, you know, if we need to screw with them. But that was a big mistake. I wish I hadn't done that, obviously. Yeah, it's running super freaking rich. A little smoke coming out of the pipes, especially number 4. But it ain't oil smoke. I can smell the gas. I mean, it's just too rich. So anyway, we'll put you on hold for a while, but at least it runs, and it's not blowing up or nothing yet. But I'm going to go ahead and off camera, I'm going to pull this rack off and do the things I need to do. Okay, folks, we've made substantial progress here, and I'll show you how it runs here in a second. We are very, very close to buttoning this thing up. I reduced the pilot jet press-ins with the only ones I had on hand, which were 35s. It says in the service manual it's supposed to have 40s in a 78. But I stuck with the 35s because I'm pretty sure I enlarged the main jets the last time. I can't remember what I did with those. They show 125. They may be reamed down, not sure. Left those alone. It runs pretty darn well, and I've got good intake impulse, and it's certainly not anywhere rich as it was. Now, I went ahead and I fashioned up a throttle push cable to help return this, because I tell you what, it has an interesting problem because the return spring right here is way, way too weak. I had this doubled up with a second spring a while back, and it's still too weak. I need to order some of these return springs like a kit. It needs to be a lot stiffer than that, because with these round slide carbs, when you have a really good intake pulse, when they want to come back down, you got to overcome that vacuum impulse. Otherwise, this sucker wants to hang. There is absolutely no restriction on the throttle shaft or anything. In other words, there's not a mechanical function that's given us a problem. You can see right there that she comes right back to idle, no problem. When you let go of the throttle, no problem. There's nothing holding that up. But the air intake pulse is that distance between the slide cutaway and the throw of the carb, the main diameter of the carb. When that gets closer, it just has so much air force that it actually holds that up. That's why this thing has to have a much stronger return spring. The other versions of this carburetor has a big, beefy Famunga return spring that's built right into here. The one I'm talking about is a real big, beefy thing, and it's a lot harder to turn these things. So this thing needs a much stiffer return spring to get it to where it needs to be. It's way, way too weak, even when it's doubled up the way I had it before. That's why also I put in the throttle push cable. But the main reason I did this, and I thought about this the last time I had it in here, was if he's running down the road on this thing, especially with the ignition switch in kind of an obscure position. Let's say the return spring broke, you know, let's say that happened. You would really have no way to close the throttle. You'd only have a way to open the throttle. So I wanted to do that for a safety factor. This is all built in-house with my, you know, cable and fittings kit and some junk laying around. I don't think we're going to have to extend the throttle cables at all. This is the original one that was on there. We're just going to run them on the inside here. The tank stops about right here anyway. It's not going to get in the way. So I just made that throttle push cable basically the same length. I'll get you set back up. We'll fire it up one more time for the day. It's getting late, so I got to go inside here and clean up and get ready for dinner. So I don't know about you, but that runs pretty damn good. Runs a hell of a lot better than it did before, and we're definitely firing all 4 cylinders. Got good exhaust temperatures, and you know, I think it might be slightly on the rich side when you give it the beans, but I think we're going to leave it at that point because those jets are easy to change. We're not going to mess with the slow jets, I don't think, at all, because it idles good, and the intake impulse, which I couldn't even get before, with the bigger jets, and earlier in the project couldn't get it before either because of other engine problems, as you already know about. That's a beautiful intake pulse, about 22 centimeters of mercury. This is it for today. I don't really know how much more on this video I'm actually going to do because, you know, there's a lot of other stuff to do that I'm going to do off camera. I'd really like you to see the finished product, and I might wait on this video for that, or I might do a really quick separate part just to show you the finished product so I can at least get this content up on the channel. I don't know yet. But what we'll do is tomorrow morning for sure in this video, I can't do it now, I don't have time. It would be the best time to do it when it's hot. Well, let's do a compression test in the morning. Now it's run for a while, it's gone through a couple of heat and cool down cycles. We're going to see what the actual compression is on all 4 carbs. Yeah, all 4 carbs. All 4 cylinders. Too much exhaust. Yeah, starting to get lightheaded, so I'm going to pack it in for the day, so we'll go ahead and see you tomorrow. All right, folks, next day, let me pin the throttle. We'll do number 1 and see what the compression is on this. Contact. 140-ish, I guess. About 140. All right, here's number 2. 135. That's pretty good. Number 3. The highest it gets to is just under 140. Maybe I'd say about 137. All right, here's number 4. See what we got here. $140. So we're between 135 and 140 on all 4 cylinders, basically, which 10% allowance, rule of thumb, 14 PSI. It's early. And so if we're within 5 PSI, we're doing just fine as far as that goes. So I would say that part of it works out. Yesterday on number 4, it was smoking and it smelled like oil. when I first started running it when it was super rich. The other 3 cylinders were not doing that. Now it cleared up, and what I figured was the cause was most likely is accumulated crap inside the pipes, because I numbered these pipes before I took them off, so they're back exactly in the same positions they were before. And the way this thing was running without running on number 4, I mean, it must have pushed a lot of shit inside the pipe, and it may have just been burning off. I'm not ruling out the fact that I screwed something up, but I did do the best I could, and I had to work within the parameters of the parts that I had available. It's not smoking, it's not burning oil, so... Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you. On this version, as far as the cylinder head goes, when I was doing all that valve work, I went ahead and replaced all 8 of the valve stem seals. Those are not the original ones I put in when I was trying to use the ground valves. I had some foresight on that, and I went ahead and ordered a pack of 8 brand new valve stem seals from 4in1.com, and those are the ones that are on here. So they are brand new valve stem seals, and they fit perfectly fine over those valves, those old school or old style, you know, the 69 to 76 valves. They're all the same diameter stem anyway, so I'm convinced that there is no valve stem issue or seal issue. But who knows, you know? I've screwed up before, but maybe this motor just needs a break-in. There's no way it broke in those rings in just a little bit. We were running it yesterday. This needs to be taken out and run for a while and gone through a number of heat and cold cycles and get it up higher RPM, lower RPM, and so forth, and fluctuate to get those rings to break in. All right, 2 things to cover on the cylinder head cover. See, I used cover twice. Isn't that clever? We have to revise our hypothesis on what happened in regards to why number 1 and 4 were hitting the exhaust valves on the pistons. And I thought that it was because it was timed wrong. Well, that may not be the case, because when I was cleaning this cover up, I noticed something that I'll show you here. On the inside of the cover, right where the cam chain tunnel is, or the cam chain I should say, comes across inside there, it's a relief for the cam chain. There is a tremendous amount of damage to that aluminum, which correlates with this side of the aluminum. So not on that side, but on this side of the aluminum. Again, as you can see here, and on this side of the aluminum is the bolts that hold the sprocket onto the cam itself. And I bet you that's what happened. I think when they did the top end job originally, had the original bolts in there and either didn't torque them up properly or didn't use any Loctite, and they came loose and hit the cover. Maybe one or more fell out. Where they're at, who knows? Maybe they broke off, I don't know. But with all that damage inside there, it stands to reason that that is probably what happened, and maybe they lost complete cam timing to the crank because the sprocket bolts came out. See, the sprocket registers on the cam itself with a very tight tolerance between the center of the sprocket and a lobe, or I should say a diameter on that cam, where the thing bolts into a flange that has the 2 threaded holes for that purpose. So as far as this way, like radial movement, it can't do that anyway, because again, it registers on that. But what keeps it in time, obviously, are those 2 bolts, you know, relative to the 1 and 4 top dead center and number 4 top dead center on this side, as we discussed earlier. That would explain that. I don't know. I'm going to have to revise that, because with that kind of damage in there, that would be certainly a high index of suspicion. The other thing is, I went ahead and plugged this hole. This hole is for a tachometer. This is a mechanically driven tachometer, like on the KZs. There's a little gear inside there that sits down and articulates with a gear on the cam. And so this thing has a little flat inside there that spins, and it drives a female flat on the cable, which is retained by this screw. There's kind of a relief on the side of the cable in kind of a radius that goes and holds this thing in. So I duplicated that on a piece of bronze and drilled an appropriate relief inside there so it wouldn't hit that little spinny flat. And then also cut an O-ring groove in that for an appropriate sized O-ring and the little relief for the screw. And put an M8 thread in the end of it so you can get the damn thing in and out if you want to. And so that seals that off nicely, because it wasn't sealed before. That was certainly a pathway for water and stuff to get inside the engine. So I wanted to cap that off. So those are the two things I wanted to mention that I forgot to mention yesterday about at least the cylinder head cover. I'm going to show one final clip of this thing running in a couple hours. It's a Sunday morning. It's 8:05 a.m. I'm sure as hell not going to fire it up now. I have some pissed off neighbors. Couple hours I'll do that. Meanwhile, I got to do some tidying up and do some, basic bullshit stuff on this thing. And then we'll film a clip, just a short clip of the final running condition of this thing. And that is going to be it. There's going to be no outro or anything after that. This will serve as the outro. There's going to be no more than 4 videos on this. I'll probably just do a short in the future when it's completely done. So watch for that. I appreciate everybody subscribing, sticking around for all 4 parts of this. I want to get it up on the channel today. This is Sunday, or for tonight, so that's why I'm doing it this way. And that way you can enjoy it at your leisure. So stick around, you get to see more crap coming in, like the Sabre and some other stuff that I've got in the pipeline. And like, share, subscribe, if you would please. It really helps me out a lot. Thanks for watching, guys. And as always, don't just repair, restore. Yeah, and we'll catch you on the next video. See you next time.